我们接着上期的节目，继续来看 Bloomberg 对 Bessent 的采访。在接下来第4段的采访中，主持人问到了 Bessent 对美国国防部长 Hexas 说的美国未来每年要减少8%的国防预算如何来看待。Bessent 说不会在电视上抢先发表意见，但是他认为特朗普政府的所有政策都是明牌，都是摆在台面上的，没有什么可隐藏的东西。于是接着主持人就开始质疑了相关政策是否会真的令政府的利息支出下降，令国防预算的这个支出会下降。Bessent 没有直接回答这个问题，充分证明了这些问题其实非常的具有挑战性，而现在它是没有答案的。然后主持人就问到了欧洲和美国的贸易战。面对这个问题， Bessent 引用了欧洲央行的前行长和前意大利总理德拉吉最近在《金融时报》上的撰文。他的目的其实还是借德拉吉的话来批判欧洲自己应该放松政策管制，进行关税改革等等。非常有意思的是， Bessent 在主持人提出了欧洲贸易战问题的时候，主动引入了中国和美国乃至欧洲和全球的贸易不平衡的问题。他认为中国可以通过出口来摆脱国内的经济衰退，而世界上没有任何一个其他的国家可以像中国做到这一点。他的意思就是美国和欧洲的贸易战不足为惧，中国才是真正令他们胆战心惊的竞争对手。那我们就来看一看这一段采访。
But we can build on that in the weeks to come.
Great.
I'm going to refer to you some comments from the Washington Post on defense cuts. They're reporting that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, ordered senior leaders at the Pentagon and throughout the US military to develop plans for cutting 8% from the defense budget in each of the next 5 years. Are you aware of that plan?
I'm in contact with Secretary Hegseth, and we're working very closely. And again, I'm not going to jump the gun here on TV, but I think everything's on the table. And can things work more efficiently?
When it comes to the defense budget, we spent more last year on our interest payments than defense. So are you hoping for 2025 to spend more on defense than the interest payments?
Well, it would depend how we got there, too. Does defense spending go down? Does the interest bill go down? We'll see what that calculus is.
Got to focus on tariffs too. Revenue raising is a part of that story. Reciprocity, national security. You want fair trade. I think we all want fair trade. The president has discussed reciprocal tariffs. He's mentioned the Europeans also offered to drop auto tariffs. Could we start there? Have the Europeans actually made that offer? Can you confirm that?
I haven't seen that, but it's possible. I think the good thing about President Trump's negotiating style is people put things that were not on the table before on the table very quickly.
So that would be reciprocity and maybe negotiating. But to offset the tax cuts, where's the revenue raising?
So there could be, not everyone is going to give on every point, right? So the Europeans seemingly put forward very quickly auto tariffs, but not every country is going to do that. My view, as I've said before, China is the most unbalanced economy in the history of the world, and they are trying to export their way out of what is a very serious recession, and the rest of the world can't do that. They can't dump Chinese goods. They're going to have to rebalance their economy. So.
第5段采访也是最重要的采访，是 Bessent 花了最多的时间和篇幅来阐述的，就是他对中国的态度和看法。他认为中国政府操纵了人民币的汇率，而主持人问到他人民币汇率的合理区间到底在哪里的时候， Bessent 又说人民币的汇率是很难评估的，因为中国的资金流动受到了管制，很多人想把资金汇出境，但是根本没有办法。当然他也提到了外资投资中国可能面临的资金汇出的风险，这其实是大大的加剧了国际资金投资中国的安全焦虑。在国际资本的盘子有限的情况下，美国希望制造业回归也是需要大量的吸引国际资本的，因为美国国内的企业和制造业投资这些年是明显不足的。另外，对于中国的关税， Bessent 暗示关税只是一个手段，他的潜台词就是也许和中国是有可谈的空间的。另外，非常重要的一个信息是，他说自己不会去参加 G20 峰会，并且说和他对口沟通的中国的官员也不会参加 G20 峰会。 大家知道 G20 峰会是一个发达国家和新兴市场国家之间建立的一个经济合作论坛，是 G7 会议提议建立的。Vincent 缺席 G20 是否意味着多边组织的再次瘸腿？这值得我们关注。那我们重点就来看这一段 Vincent 对中国问题的阐述吧。
Tariffs on Chinese goods went up 10%, and a lot of that, again, Mexico, Canada, China, that was in response to the fentanyl crisis.
China's the only one, though, that those tariffs have actually stayed in place. Is that the opening salvo? How high do you think Trump wants to go when it comes to Chinese tariffs?
Well, I'm not going to give away his negotiating hand on TV. I do have my first call with my Chinese counterpart tomorrow morning, so I look forward to a very productive discussion.
What's the first point you want to bring up?
That we want to work together. And as we said, a lot of the precursor ingredients from fentanyl originate in China. So we really want to put a stop to that very quickly.
Historically, there's been some currency concerns with regards to China as well. In the conversations we had you before taking up this post with you, you mentioned that some countries, some currencies are undervalued. Is China one of them? Is that something you'd like to remedy?
Yeah, well, Jonathan, what I've said is, make no mistake, the U.S. still has a strong dollar policy, but that does not mean that bilaterally other countries can weaken their currencies versus the dollar or manipulate their currencies. So, but specifically on China, China's a very difficult currency to value, because I really think that when we think about the value of the RMB, it's in three different equilibrium. On any academic model, say purchasing power parity, it's cheap. On the other side, you have 1.4 billion people who are subject to capital controls, and they want to get some of their money out of the country. And then you have what I would call the X factor. If you put money into China today, what's your belief that you will get it out in 2, 3, 4 years? So it's very difficult to come up with a point value of the currency.
You've talked about the desire to have a strong dollar policy for the United States, but is a strong dollar at odds with the idea of bringing industrial production back to the United States, and sort of speaks to some of the concerns about other countries trying to devalue their currencies?
Well, I think that we will necessarily have a strong dollar if we run good policies, and I think we're going to run good policies. If we cut the trade deficits, when you think about the trade deficit is a combination of terms of trade, value of the dollar, and our own budget deficit. So if we bring down the budget deficit, then I think everyone, if we are deregulating, if we make the tax cuts permanent, if we make the U.S. more business friendly, then all the reserve managers in the world, all the private investors are going to want a piece of that, and the dollar will be strong, but we will be able to push back on that through good policies, through productivity. The U.S. productivity, I think, I've been meeting with a lot of the tech leaders lately, and I think we are very close to the cusp of this AI finally coming into the productivity numbers.
Do you think that a strong dollar is necessary in order to offset some of the cost that could be otherwise associated with the tariffs?
Traditional economic theory would tell you that the dollar strengthens on the tariffs, but who knows what we've already seen since the dollar appreciation since November 5th. Markets live in the future, so have we already priced in some of that? And on the other side, what we are trying to do is to get other economies to successfully rebalance. My conversation tomorrow with and this is really just an introductory conversation, but as we go down the road, the Chinese need to rebalance their economy in favor of consumption. That they are suppressing the consumer in favor of the business community. So, as that happens, then they will increase their demand. Same thing in Europe. Mario Draghi, for any of your viewers who didn't see it, Mario Draghi had a fantastic editorial this weekend in the Financial Times where he said, look, we have put the equivalent of more tariffs on ourselves, more tariffs on ourselves than the U.S. could ever contemplate. So could you get a very strong euro if somehow they had an immaculate deregulation?
Just quickly, you're having this call with your Chinese counterpart. Will you see him next week at the G20 finance ministers meeting?
I'm not going to Cape Town due to some domestic considerations. I actually think that he's not attending either.
Is that what he's told you?
This is the readout that we've gotten.
Okay.
So, and again, I also believe several of my other counterparts won't be there. I have been speaking and in contact with them regularly, and then I will be seeing them at the spring IMF World Bank meetings in DC.
第6段内容是有关俄乌战争和平协议的内容的。他认为乌克兰应该推进民主进程，其实是暗示乌克兰应该开启总统选举了。但是大家知道，乌克兰目前是属于暂时状态的，而暂时的法律就是冻结了总统选举，直到战争结束。在复杂的地缘政治和战争的过程当中，停止总统选举是各国通行的做法。另外 Bessent 也解释了有关俄罗斯冻结资产的用途。他说到，俄罗斯被冻结资产产生的利息正在被用于支付欧洲的贷款。他强调，美国迄今为止向乌克兰提供的援助都是捐赠，而欧洲提供的援助则是贷款，是通过负债的方式来达成的。他其实是在贬低欧洲各国的财力之弱，也是美国和欧洲分化的一个信号。在这段采访中，还有一个极其重要的信息是有关美国和乌克兰的矿物协议的。在慕尼黑会议之前 Bessent 作为美国政府的代表，带去了基辅一份重要的矿产开发协议，但是泽连斯基在看了之后拒绝签署该份协议。Bessent 在本次采访当中也提起说，特朗普的政府有一个非常优雅的计划，即通过经济联系来拉近乌克兰和美国的关系。他认为美国对乌克兰有更大的经济利益，可以提供安全保障。他说，本来泽连斯基同意在慕尼黑会议之前签署矿产协议，但是最终却没有签下来。但他完全没有提到这份协议上的不公平条约，以及乌克兰的焦虑和诉求。他还批评了泽连斯基在慕尼黑发表的一些言论，认为非常的不合适，是导致美乌关系出现隔阂的很重要的原因。Bessent 认为正确的步骤是通过经济联系拉近乌克兰和美国的关系，说服美国的公众来支持乌克兰，然后与俄罗斯进行谈判。他提到，如果有需要，美国可以取消对俄的制裁。基本上在这一段采访当中，他完全对乌克兰采取了批评的态度，认为乌克兰没有道理，并且出尔反尔。他同时也批评了欧洲在国防支出上的不足，并表扬了波兰在国防支出超过 GDP 的 5%， 并同时创造了高速的经济增长和强力的宏观经济发展水平。这一段也是非常有意思的，我们来看视频。
Wanted to talk to you about national security as well, and the dollar has certainly got a role to play on that front. The sanctions policy of the United States. As we look back, do you think that's been misused, abused?
Yeah, excellent question, Jonathan. That when I came into Treasury, if you think about sort of Treasury is five pieces. There's IRS on one side, the Mint on the other, but the main focus of in the building at Treasury is domestic finance, international finance. That's what I've been doing for my career for 35 years. I was able to hit the ground running on that. What we call TFI, terrorism finance, is where my biggest learning curve is. So I'm spending a lot of time on that, and I'm reviewing the sanctions policies. Why do we do what we do? Have they been effective? Are we running a 21st century program as opposed to some outdated modalities?
Well, the current sanctions are in place on places like Russia to try to get Putin to a negotiating table. You are intricately involved in this deal. You were just in Kyiv. You met with President Zelensky. Trump yesterday called Zelensky a dictator without these elections and said that he better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Does this language make it harder for you to get that minerals deal over the finish line?
Well, look, I think President Zelensky, unfortunately, escalated and has put some daylight between.
How did he escalate?
A lot of his remarks in Munich I thought were inappropriate. President Zelensky, when I met with him, assured me that he'd be signing the minerals deal in Munich. He has not. And look, the real purpose here, and I think it's turned into kind of this media circus, that President Trump had a very elegant plan, and it was bring the Ukrainians closer to the U.S. Let's do this economic deal. And even Karl Rove in the Wall Street Journal this morning approves of it, that the U.S. with greater economic interest in Ukraine provides a security shield. So the sequencing of what was going to happen was bring the Ukrainians closer to the U.S. Through economic ties, convince the American people and the American public, get them on side, and then tell the Russians, go to the negotiating table with a very fulsome message that if we need to, we will take sanctions up.
Well, what about tapping the Russian frozen assets, some $300 billion? Would you force your European counterparts to not just have them frozen, but actually tap them? Trump talks about repaying the American taxpayer. Shouldn't Russia be a part of that?
Well, what's happening now is they are being tapped. So the returns from
the interest,
the returns from the freezed asset pile is going to pay the Europeans. You know, what's very important to understand here is that everything the U.S. has done to date, the American people, the American taxpayer, is grants. The Europeans, roughly half of what they've done are loans, and the runoff from the frozen assets is being used to repay European loans.
Have you communicated that to the Europeans, that you're upset with them?
What's that?
Have you communicated to the Europeans that you're upset with them?
I think Vice President Vance did a pretty good job in Munich.
Do you think they understand that the United States is running a deficit of north of 6%, close to 7%, and that the budget for defense is north of $800 billion? Do you think they understand the gravity of the moment in the United States, the U.S. perspective?
Look, I think that they understand that President Trump, during his first term, this term, Vice President Vance, and the entire security apparatus have told them that many of the countries are deficient in their NATO spending, and they need to come up. You know, when I went to Ukraine, you fly into Poland. Poland is spending almost 5% of GDP on defense. And you know, look at Poland sitting next to Ukraine. Poland is one of the great economic success stories of the past 30 years. After China, they've had the fastest growth. So you know, why couldn't Ukraine, with some U.S. capital, ingenuity, know-how, and root out some of the corruption, do as well as their neighbors done?
If Europe spends more, will it allow America to cut back on defense spending? Is that the ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is for the Europeans to come up to where they've said that they are going to, and to provide their share of the NATO spending.
You mentioned sanctions. So do you have both on the table ready to go, a sanctions ramp up or wind down on Russia, depending how these talks go?
I think that'd be a very good characterization.
When it comes to the talks, Trump still thinks he's going to meet with Putin, he said probably by the end of the month. The end of the month is next week. Are you preparing for that?
I'm not going to give away the timetable, but the president is committed to ending this conflict very quickly. And I will tell you, you're in Kyiv. I went to a children's hospital that had been bombed. And this was not a children's hospital where you take your child if he or she scrapes their knee. Like this was. So
you can imagine. I did that trip that you're talking about just a few months ago. You can imagine why they haven't had elections then, right? They're living in this martial law.
They are, and it's probably necessary to move forward with a democratic process.
最后一段也是公众非常关心和好奇的，就是作为特朗普核心团队成员的 Bensent 如何看待另外一个特别的核心的成员 Musk。Bensent 对 Musk 的评价很高，他认为 Musk 像伟大的运动员一样专注、精力充沛，并且勇于打破常规解决问题。 主持人提出了 Musk 的宿敌 OpenAI 的 CEO Sam Altman 曾经在媒体和公开的场合上面说到过 Musk 是一个缺乏安全感的人，问 Bensent 怎么看， Bensent 对此不置可否，并没有直接回应。
We've covered a lot of topics. One name that has not come up very much is Elon Musk. Let's finish there. You've had some tremendous colleagues in your experience over your career, including the great investor Stanley Druckenmiller. You've worked alongside Donald Trump through the campaign. Can you just describe what it's like to work with someone like Elon Musk, someone as successful in American business? Just what's that like day to day?
Yeah, look, Elon Musk, like Stan Druckenmiller, I always compare the great business people to great athletes. They keep their eye on the prize. Whether he's the Messi or Messi or Michael Jordan, he is focused and his energy level is unbelievable. And he's gotten to where he has because everything's on the table. There's always this examination of why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing what we're doing? And most of all, if something's not working, let's fix it.
Sam Altman was on Bloomberg TV just 2 weeks ago and called Elon Musk insecure. Do you view him as such?
I'm not going to get into the tech magnate, slap fest.
Secretary Bessent, I would say that's wise.
Yeah.
He is drawing criticism, though. When you and the administration come out and pick out the various things where money is being wasted on, I think we can all agree that that's a waste of money. Where there might be some concern is the way that some people are being laid off in Washington, that it lacks some dignity. Could you comment on that today?
Look, I think that...
Tax Act is designed to help you get your taxes done. Let's get them over with.
There are many fine public servants, but I think that I've been in Washington 3 or 4 weeks now, and there's a real bias towards the status quo. And if you don't move quickly, then the lobbyists get involved, the entrenched interest, and it's impossible to get anything done. So, anyone who has experienced financial hardship, any kind of the mental duress, I'm sorry for them, but that's also what the average American experiences every day. Most of us, you all come to work. You want good ratings. You get a performance readout. You really push forward. And I can tell you that in Treasury, I have been so impressed with the quality of the permanent staff. And I want to get everybody back to the office. And a lot of people are on board with that.
When it comes to your prior life, you didn't have a boss. You said it would be like atrophy if you weren't trading financial markets every single day. What is it like now to be in this position where you make decisions that people can trade against what you're doing, and you also have a boss that sits pretty close to you in terms of the Treasury Department and the West Wing?
Well, look, I only had my own firm for 8 years. So I worked with Mr. Soros, with Stan Druckenmiller, and it's a great feedback mechanism. And I think I have the best position in D.C. I'm on the White House campus. We have a great staff in Treasury. I can be in the Oval in 4 minutes. And so there's proximity. And again, not like Elon Musk, President Trump is committed to shaking up the status quo. He came in with a mandate, and he's moving on it very quickly.
You're a total gentleman, and you've been very gracious with your time. Thanks for being a good friend to this program over the last year. Secretary Bessent there of the Treasury. Secretary Bessent, thank you, sir.
I'm here with U.S. Treasury...